you. Good evening. You're welcome. Yeah, now I'm going to wait for about a minute. So we'll have a few more people join us. You're welcome. Thank you. Thank you. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Princess Lillian's Garden. I'm Lillian. With all the recent happenings that we have all realized, I've believed that a lot of people have come to me and said, let's see how it's done growing food in bags. Thank you very much for coming. And this is a very popular practice that has been overlooked by a lot of us because we would say, I don't have a space for a garden, and so that's why I don't grow these things. But what we have to really understand is that having space for a garden is just the same as having a space to walk out of your house. If you don't live in a flat and you're living in a place where you have a backyard and a front yard, that little space, you should be able to have somewhere you can place a bag such as this. You fill the bag with soil and you are good to go with growing what you want. It's always a nice idea to start small. Don't go and get maybe 50 bags overnight unless you have the manpower to handle it. But you can get a few bags and put them, it doesn't even have to be against the wall. You put them against each other. If you put 4 bags against each other and you start to grow something inside, you will be surprised at how nicely they will grow. If it's a kind of plant that needs support, you can put a support stick inside and tie it. But you've created a garden pot for yourself or a garden bed by all these bags that we have and we end up throwing away. For example, this is just a shopping bag that's been used to bring something home. Usually, I will throw it away. But when I've started growing in bags, I keep them and I wait for springtime. This is also another bag. This is a food bag that I bought food in it, but it is quite tough and strong. All I have to do is cut the top and then I can use it, put some soil in it, and I can grow smaller items. So there's actually one I'm showing you before the end of this video that I've already folded over and it looks good to go for growing. Here's another one. We have so many of these bags lying around our houses. And also, nowadays, all those carrier bags that you have from shops that are a bit strong and they don't break up quickly, they can all be used for gardening and it doesn't take a lot of space. It's very great to see these bags being reused. Thank you very much. They are reusable because we don't want to throw all of them away and it goes into landfill or into the waterways. It's better if we find a way to reuse them. Sometimes you go to some shops and they have these very tough bags. You use them do something with them in all those portions where you think you don't have a lot of space. You may not have a lot of time for gardening, but if you're just using one bag, you can at least grow something. And one thing I believe you can grow very nicely is the potato. This is sweet potato. Everything that you want to grow will need a bit of planning. That's because when you take a potato like this, you have to do something to it first before you decide you're going to put it in the soil and it's on its way to giving you sweet potatoes. What you do is called chitting. Chitting. That is, you're going to allow the eyes that are on the body, because there are some eyes on the body. You can see there's little indentures on the body of this potato. You're going to allow them to grow a bit before you say you have something to put in the soil. Those are called slips. The best time for us to start creating slips is about 8 weeks before we're going to plant it outside, because that's about as much time it will take for you to have a mature slip that you can break off this potato and plant outside. So to create a slip, you'd put some water in this bottle and this potato in, but the potato will not be allowed to go all the way in. The part of it that you want to go in will be just about a third, and that's where you put two toothpicks. You put toothpicks to make sure this potato cannot go further into this bottle. So just a little portion of the potato goes in the bottle and you're growing your chit. You can leave this in a safe corner where it's not going to, because if you have water in a bottle, you don't want it to be getting heat and the water pouring away. You can place this in a safe corner on your windowsill and it goes on, but you don't necessarily want it to be in too much sun, because it needs to relax a bit for it to start growing. In 8 weeks' time, you could come back and you would have your potato chit. It will have some green leaves on it, very small green leaves. And these are the ones we call slips. You take it and you can grow it in bags such as this. You are going to be able to get about 6 chits from each potato. And each of those slips can have about 8 potatoes underneath. So if you put one slip in each bag, you are going to end up with a lot of potatoes at the end of the day. And it really bodes well for what we are trying to do. We are trying to produce food. Also, this is a yam. This is the yam that I planted. You can just take these and put it in the soil. That is the soil that is in this bag as well. You put just the one and it grows. And you have your yam in about 8 months, because that's about as long as it takes for this yam to grow. And it's the same as the puna yam that we buy from the shops. You just take a cutting of the puna yam and you put it in the soil and it grows. But what happens is this yam is a corn is much smaller than the other puna yam that we eat as well. Now that other puna yam will have smaller leaves that will probably need some sort of support, because the leaves will be growing on vines. You can see that this yam is growing on single leaf stalks and they just go upright. The proper puna yam will be growing on vines and the leaves will need a sort of support for it to be able to stay off the ground. You don't want your puna yam to be against the ground and get eaten by insects and get infected. You want the leaves to be healthy, because when the leaves are healthy, then they photosynthesize properly and send a lot of carbohydrates as storage. That is what we come along and harvest as yams. So it's a really good idea to buy this yam and just grow it. Now, the type of yam that you would buy are two types. I'm talking about the bigger yam. There is one that is called the seed that's been prepared for planting. You can buy this and put it in the soil and it will grow. But if you don't have access to that type of seed that's been prepared maybe by some agric people or some local farmers, and you still want to grow your own yam at home, you can take one yam that is good, not a yam that has some infestations on it, and cut it into about 6 pieces. Each piece is going to be about 5 to 6 centimeters cubed. You will now rinse it with disinfectant, whatever form of disinfectant that you have, you would use to rinse this yam. When I learned this from a guy that works at IART, he was using Dettol. He said it's all right because it's just going into the soil. Now, the purpose of this disinfectant is to stop any growth so that this yam can actually kill very well and be ready for growth when you put it in the soil. You don't want it to remain fresh and start having infestations because it's going to be in touch with the atmosphere. So you put it just on a surface and allow it to dry for about 4 days. When all the cut, when you've just cut yam, it will be having this liquid surface coming out of it. When all of that has dried up, you can now take your yam and put it, you can put one in a bag because that's about as much as the bag will take. And then you put the soil in it. Now, the problem that I know that a lot of people have is the soil. There's, oh, how much soil am I going to buy? And this and that. Let me tell you and assure you, the soil at the back of your house is good for growing. There is nothing wrong with the soil. Because a lot of people will say the soil at the back of the house, that is dirt. The soil that you buy in the shop, that is for growing. No. The soil that you have at the back of your house, if there's something growing in it, it means it's fertile. The only thing you will now have to do is you probably want to add some amendments. It could be chicken poop, it could be some um, other fertilizers like you make with food, food waste. You can make with food waste and you will add it to the soil. That's you're feeding that soil so that whatever you plant in it can grow very well. So you put your food waste directly into the bag where you've planted the yam and the cocoyam and even the potatoes. You can put the food waste cut into smaller bits, put it into the soil. You're feeding the plant and cover it properly with soil again. Just to make sure it doesn't attract some um, little critters that will come along and start to uproot what you have grown. You have to ensure that those kind of organisms are not going to be able to have access to what you have grown. You want to make sure that your things are actually very safe when you actually put them in the soil. Yes, the you will trellis the yam because the yam cannot grow up by itself. If you know the popular pothos, the leaves are just on vines. That is just how the yam grows. The yam just grows up, but the vine is not strong enough to remain upright. So we'll need to have some stick in place. Could even be that you've grown it near a place where there's something like a gate or a burglar proofing, and you just allow it to get tied to all those and it grows up because all it needs is for these leaves to be exposed to sunlight so that they can carry on photosynthesis. When they carry on photosynthesis, they would store some of the food in the roots. And this is what we are going to have because the the yam is an underground stem part. That's where they're going to store the food. But these ones are the corn. It's all underground. And when the leaves are photosynthesizing, they use some of the carbohydrates that they have produced. They use it to remain alive, but then they store up some. And this is what we are going to harvest at the end of the day. So when you grow this, it's going to take about 8 months to grow. But then that's not too long or too bad because one thing is with cocoyam, you can actually harvest some of the leaves because the leaves are also good for food. So when you see some of the leaves of the cocoyam, you can harvest it. So please make sure it's not eaten raw. On no account should anybody eat the cocoyam leaf raw. It has to be cooked. You need to cook it, fry it, roast it. It has to be cooked. And it's got a lot of nutrients. When I do a video on the advantages of eating cocoyam, it's going to show you that the cocoyam is actually a worthy thing for us to be growing. And it contains protein, it contains vitamin B, B6 in particular, and it contains a high level of potassium. This is the same with the pruna yam that we have. It contains a lot of nutriment and it helps to control such things as our blood sugar levels when we eat it. Now, the reason why some people would say if you eat some food, it is the additions that you're eating with it. For example, somebody who comes along and he has pounded the yam and is eating it with a whole bowl of stew with a lot of meat, that is when it becomes unhealthy. It's not the pounded yam itself that is unhealthy. It's the amount of it that one is eating and the amount of meat that goes with it. But when you are eating a sizable portion of your pounded yam, it's going to be actually a positive effect in your well-being because it's good for the body. So when you want to grow this, you don't need to cheat it or anything. What I did was I put it into a small container like this so that it was indoor. I wanted to start it indoors. Put it in a small container like this. This is just a juice container. I put it in with the soil and waited until I saw the first sign of growth. A little portion of the shoot will come out of the soil. And that's when I'll now take it and go and put it outside. And very easily, I can grow it inside this bag. So, although this one that you're seeing here is growing in a pot, I have some that are growing in a bag, but I can't bring those ones inside to come and do this video. So, these ones are actually the ones that I have indoors. The ones that I have outdoors, a lot of them are in bags because it's just the same as having a very solid pot. But with the case of the bag, if you don't want it to be a garden anymore, you can just pull out everything and that's the end of it until the following year. So you do a clearance, you put all the soil together, and then you wait until you want to grow again. So it's different from having a garden bed or an entire ground that you've planted in. It's one very nice way of producing food in these times that we are all noticing there's a lot of food shortages. There are so many ways for us to source these bags. You can use shopping trolleys. I actually have one of these outside. This is a shopping trolley. The one I had before, when it got too old and I couldn't use it again, I started to use it to grow a plant that is going to avocado, because the avocado needs very long roots. It needs very long space. I started to use it to grow. So you can use all these bags to grow different things instead of wondering, where am I going to get a pot? Where am I going to get a container? Bags are very good for growing. It's very versatile. You can move it around. You can arrange it in whatever space you have. Because if it's a pot, you can say the space is too small, and then you find out that it's not easy for you to carry on with your gardening. But if you do this and it's a bag, you can either arrange it in a row of twos, and if it becomes too, thank you very much, welcome. I can't see you. Thank you. You're welcome. And if you arrange it in a row of twos, if that's all the space that you have, then that's all right. But if you cannot have space for that, you can do it into a small portion. Maybe it's in 4 by 4. You place four, and that's a total of 16 bags. You put them, and then even that is not possible, you can put one in all the spaces that you have. That is possible for you to put a small bag like this, and something will be growing in it. You put it in, the yam would need a support, that is trellising, something for you to tie it to, so that when it's properly tied, you will be able to see the leaves are growing well. You will see everything that's going on with the plant, and try to place them together, because the yam needs a certain level of humidity. You don't want it to just be blowing in the wind by itself. If you plant about 4 of them and you place them close to each other, the wind will not be able to blow too much between them, and it's going to give you a good harvest at the end of the day. Even I have seen situations where people are growing salad leaves in this, and it really worked very well, because all that we have to do is place this bag side by side and put the soil in it. And one issue that a lot of people have is that we don't have soil, because you have to purchase a lot of soil if you are going to be doing and expanding your garden every year. If you can't have access to purchasing soil, because a lot of people have told me, I've told somebody to help me get loamy soil, but they haven't been able to get it for one reason or the other, then you can use the soil under your grass. That is, just scrape off the grass in the area that you want to use for the garden and put it into the bag. Put some waste from the kitchen, the peels, the seeds that you don't want, just put them all together, and it will be a good feed for your plants as the plant is growing, because all these things are going to be food for the earthworms, food for the microbes, and they will also be a sort of support for the body of your plant. It's a very good way of making sure that the things that you are growing are receiving good nutriment, because by the time you have grown something and you just go and come and a whole week has gone by, you don't think about it. The things that you have grown outside, all you have to do is once in a while you water it, because these roots don't want too much watering. That's another advantage of planting root crops. They don't want too much watering, so you just need to water it maybe once in a week, and a lot of the times it rains as well. But if it does not rain, please remember to water your plants, because a lot of us depend on, or when it rains it will water my plant. That's not the best way to go about with whatever we have planted. If it rains, then you can say it has been watered. If it does not rain, please keep in mind and just simply water your plant. That's why maybe you tell everybody else water it, but also make sure you do. Because sometimes, there's this story about maybe it's the chicken said, oh, what did the farmer say today? The farmer said, I'm going to cut the grass. Oh, what did the farmer say today? Oh, I'm going to ask my friend to cut the grass. When you keep asking somebody to water it and water it, they may not be watching it and you wouldn't be aware. So if you take a check, you put some water by yourself, then you will actually at least be in 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 the know of how your plants are doing. You will see that they are growing well, they are well watered, they are actually in a state where there's no dryness. Because a lot of the times people would tell me I planted something and then it got burnt in the soil. That's one comment I hear all the time. This does not bode well. Even if you have a balcony, I've got friends that have balconies because they live on a higher level. And I'm like, you are so lucky because you can place a large plastic sheet and have just about four of these bags on your balcony. This does not need too much watering. You place the soil in it and you plant what you want. The sun will come and the plant will take care of itself. This is a very good way of growing our own food. It's also good exercise because it keeps your mind alert. You will remember when you come in, when you go out, oh, my plants are there. You look out at them, and it's encouraging to be able to see when you go out and you harvest. I have these things growing, potatoes. I mean, yeah, these potatoes growing, and I went out and harvested them. I'm going to just cook them without even taking off the skin because it's so nice. These potatoes grow so well, even without me thinking of it. I just harvested these today from my garden at the back, just so I can show. These were the ones that I've collected before because when I harvest it, the little ones that I have that come up, I keep them as seed. You can see that they've turned brown because they've been here for about 2 weeks. I think I harvested them maybe about 2 weeks, almost 2 weeks ago. And we took care of the bigger ones. And the smaller ones, I just said, okay, you go into this egg box. It's always good to use an egg box because then you can keep it covered. It doesn't receive too much sunlight and it stays there. When it's spring, before it's springtime, like 8 weeks to spring, as I said earlier, I will start chitting it. That is, I will put it in a in a place where it will be a bit damp. So I can just put some water in here and place it in another tray. And after a few days, you will see that this thing will start growing before I will put it in the soil. So there's just one simple difference between the potatoes and the sweet potatoes. With this one, you don't even have to separate the chits from the main body. You can put it in the soil just like that. It may have about, because it's very small, may have about three chits coming out of it. The chits are young seedlings without roots. So it may have about three chits coming out of it. So you can just take it and put it into the soil with those that have come out of it, and you know that it will grow. In the case of this sweet potato, when it grows, you would have to separate the chit because there will be no space for all of them to grow if you plant them together. So you'd have to separate it. This one may produce about 5 or 6 chits. You wait for about 8 weeks before you take it off. Then you put it in the soil and it will grow. Now, if you want to ensure that it is safe, you don't put it in the soil outside yet. You would find a little container, put it in there first. Make sure that it has started growing safely. Make sure that it is all right. It's always better to make sure that our plants are growing safely and they are all right before we go and put it outside, because the weather in the night will be different from the weather in the day. They may actually find it comfortable in the evening when it is cool and find it too sunny in the day when the sun is out. So what you want to do for your young plant is you probably want to start them off inside. So although that's cheat, it's already got some green leaves on it. We have about 2 or 3 green leaves on each one. You want to start each tea in a little container indoor. Just put some soil and put it in. And after it's been in for 2 weeks, you can now take it outside and put it in the soil. Now, one thing that's an advantage is that now that you have your cheat and you've put it into little pots and it's just growing there on its own, it gives you time to actually prepare your garden outside. So, if you haven't actually filled your bags, this gives you time to go out there, fill the bag with soil. You want to put some food scraps, you put them in. You want to put some chicken poop, whatever form of start off and you want, you can start preparing this bag. Make sure that it has drainage, because these good plants don't want to be growing in soggy soil. They want the soil to be dry, not dry as if they won't get water from it, but they don't want it to be waterlogged. That's why you have to make sure that it's got holes and let the water be able to go out. That's what's most important for growing in bags. And I'll show you where to put the holes. When you have the bag like this, you don't necessarily put the holes underneath. You put the holes below on the sides. Put the holes below on the sides, because this will actually mean that some water can stay at the very bottom, and that's just it, so that it doesn't dry out if you forget to wet it. But at the top, it will be dry because there's drainage. So you will come all the time and you can water your plant, you can give it some more food scraps. This also serves as a way to get rid of a lot of our food scraps, because a lot of us have such a high volume of food scraps that we have to put into the bin. If you have the access for somewhere to put those food scraps, the food that you're putting into the bin will reduce, because the only food scraps that I wouldn't want you to put in is the meat, the chickens. You don't want to put all that in here, and you don't want to put oil as well. But you can put cooked food left over. That's all right. That can still go in, because it's not as if you're pouring an entire frying pan of old oil into it. But make sure, as much as possible, that you cover it with soil after you've put any amount of food scraps, because the food scraps that you put in is for feeding your plant, not for feeding some squirrels and so on that will come running from everywhere and then digging up your garden. You want to make sure that you keep it properly covered and safe, so that the plant can grow very well and very happy. The yam would take about 8 months to mature, and you will get very good yam. Now, one thing is, when your yam is growing, the leaves will be green, you support it, that means the yam is still getting bigger. You will know that the yam is no longer growing if you've been wetting it regularly. I'm not saying if you didn't wet it that your yam will be all right in 3 months. If you've been wetting it regularly, you've been putting the food scraps that you have around you, and you notice that after about 6 months, the leaves start to turn yellow. It means maybe your yam is maturing. So you can gently dig in the soil and touch the top of the yam to see how big it is. You inspect it, and then you can be able to see how wide the yam is. I mean, if you see a yam that is about 6 centimeters wide, then you will know that that is a yam that is almost getting to maturity. So you cover it back. So the reason why you will do this is that you just want to make sure you're doing the right things for your yam. You're not underwatering it, because if you're underwatering it, when you dig the top of the yam, what you're going to see is going to be about 2 centimeters. That's going to be very tiny after 6 months. So, because your yam should mature in about 8 to 10 months, that sounds like a long time, but the yam is growing outside. It's not actually it's not disturbing me where it's at. All I do is walk around, water it. There's food scraps. At the end of 1 week, I go around, I spread it, and share it among all my plants. I don't see that as the plant disturbing me. It's actually something for me to do and be out there in the great outdoors. So, one thing that we need to do for ourselves is to make sure where we locate our plants is convenient for us and the rest of the family. Don't locate your plants where you know that your child normally sits. That's his favorite spot to sit. Then you locate your plant there. Then after a week, you will have to shift your plant, because one important thing that I would like to discuss is that we must not be lifting our plants too often. We have to consider safety issues. Yes, one advantage is that you can move it if you need to, but you have to ask yourself, do you really need to move that plant? So that's why at the beginning, you have to locate your plant. Don't put it in the way where your son is going to be trying to take his bicycle out. Because I've seen somebody who's decided to start a garden on a balcony, and the bicycles are at the back and the plants are at the front. What you do is adjust it in such a way that you leave room for the bicycles to be able to go out. Just to make sure you don't have to keep lifting your plant, because you consider the safety of your own arms and back from lifting plants. Also, they can break easily. If you are lifting your plants all the time, you're calling for them to break. So, one thing that we always consider is the safety while we're doing our gardening. It's very important. A lot of people may not think that gardeners consider safety, but as gardeners, we consider safety as number one, because I don't want to be growing food and end up not being better off. When you're growing food, you should be better off, because you have grown the food that you want to eat. Not that you will now say, oh, when I was growing the food, then I broke my arm, or no, 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 no. You should be better off while you're growing the food, because you're trying to provide for yourself. Now, another thing that I want to mention is, what are the advantages that we will get from this? The advantages is that after you have grown one set of food, you have mastered that, and you can now add something else to it. If you have grown maybe about 6 yams this year, you can decide to add maybe carrots the following year, and you will just add a few of it just to see if you like to grow it. Because even with the carrots, you can eat the grains on the top and the carrots at the bottom. It all comes in handy. It's just like this cocoa yam that we have here. This yam, you can eat the corn. This is the corn. You can eat the corn, and you can eat the leaves cooked in vegetable soup. Now, a lot of people know that this yam is very important because it's very good as a weaning food. When you're weaning a baby, this yam is very good. It contains a lot of nutrients that's very good for a growing child. That's why a lot of people will go to the market when they and they'll buy it and you wonder because it's very good. Also, the sweet potato is a very good winning food. All these foods are very good for people at that stage of life. Also, it's very good if you need vitamin B in your system. They they contain a lot of sweet potatoes. I think root crops contain a lot of root potatoes. I mean, contain a lot of vitamin B. That's just one thing that is special with them. But this type of yam is actually more versatile to grow than the bigger one. Although I would encourage you to grow the bigger ones because this is quite small. It may not fill you quickly. So when you grow the bigger yams, you can put one in each bag or two. If you put two in a bag, it will work. You would support it and it will grow well. Because the space that a yam needs is not a lot. But if you have a lot of space, you can grow one in each bag. So you know that if you have 16 bags, you have grown 16 yams in it and you water it well and it comes up nicely. This is a very good way of producing food for ourselves without the stress of I'm going to a very far away farm. You can do this anywhere right around the house. Or if you have a plot of land that you're not yet using, or you have an allotment and you have a small corner there, you can grow these yams there. You can grow a lot of root crops. You can also try and grow onions. You can grow onions in bags and they do very well. Now, when you want to grow onions, come on out. When this is the onion I'm talking about, it may be this white type, or it may be the red type, or the giant type. There are just different types of onions that we have. Now, when you want to grow this onion, you will need seeds. The seeds are very tiny and black. That's what you put into the soil. And when it has grown for about 3 weeks, it comes along and is still very small. That's what you put into the soil and grow. A lot of the times when you go to the shop to buy onions, what you are going to get is not seeds, it is startlets. That is an onion that is just very small. That's actually a very nice type to grow because it's not going to take you a long time before you will get a big onion from it. So what I'm just trying to say is that the seed stage will first of all get to a smaller stage. And that smaller stage, a lot of people prepare it. I know gardeners that just grow onion seeds, and when it gets to that small startlet, is called onion startlet. When it gets to that little onion stage, they harvest it, they package it, and they sell it to other gardeners. So it's that onion startlet that I usually buy, but I've also bought the seed. I haven't grown it anyway. But the onion startlet means it has already gone through one stage and it's been harvested at that small stage. So you can take that and grow it and you will have your onion growing. But a lot of people may not be able to have access to the onion startlet. So when you see an onion like this, you can put it in the soil, especially if it has already busted out and it's got a green tip coming out, showing you that I want to grow. You take that onion and put it in the soil and let it grow. You give it very good soil condition, water it, sunlight. It will start to flower after a while. Those flowers would produce tiny black seeds. That's what you will plant. It's taking a long time, isn't it? Yes, it does take a bit of time, but you will get happy when you are harvesting your onions. So when you take these onion seeds, after growing it for about 5 months, you can now plant the seeds. Now you've already got seeds because you were not able to get seeds before. You can now plant the seeds and you don't have to uproot it. You can just leave it there like that and let it grow. It will grow and reach the stage where you can transplant it outside, and you don't need to get to that little onion stage, big onion stage. From the time that you planted it indoors and you take it and you put it outside, you can wait the 7 months for the time for you to harvest. Now, how would you know when to harvest your onion? Well, the leaves will start drying, they will start falling over. You will know that the onions are ready to be harvested. So you can just check. You check and then you see, okay, the onions are big. If you check and they're not yet big, you can cover it back again and let it be in there for another 2 weeks. But if the leaves are already dying, they wouldn't be growing too big for too much. But what you want to do is that make sure the soil is loose because onions would expand more in loose soil. What a lot of people would do is they would lift the onion, that is, they would uproot it a bit, but still leave it there. But we don't want to do this if you have critters around that will come along and actually devour the onion. If it's a place where you don't have any organisms going around, you can try to lift it. It's called lifting. You lift your onions so that they're no longer surrounded by so much soil. This will also allow the skin to brown over and become dry like this, because this is the form that you actually want to come up with. So then you can see that you've grown a good onion. The skin will still be soft and tender when you bring it out of the soil. That is the best way that we want to grow our onion, because when you're growing onion, it takes a long time and you want to get a good result. You don't want to take that long time growing this onion and find out that, oh, it's still not gone good. So you want to put it in the soil and make sure you lift it so that it can dry, and then you bring it indoors. When you bring your onions indoors at the harvesting, don't pile them together so that they become sweaty. You need to put them one by one. And that is why a lot of people would do something like the stocking system, where you would put this inside a stocking and tie it and put the next one in so that these onions get a chance to be in air. They are exposed to air so that they can really dry and produce this skin. And it does take time, but sooner you will have onions that you can almost say, oh, the onions are free because they're just growing there in your garden and you're just using your time to produce it. What I would suggest is that some people may be very good at growing onions. You just need to try. Some people may be very good at growing potatoes. Some people may be very good at growing yams. So if everybody tries and you see the one that you're very good at, then stick to that very well. Because that is your own area and try to grow a lot of it. Then we'll have a lot of trade by barter. Because I have a lot of food crops that people would bring and give to me, and a lot of people would also collect. Some I grow tomatoes, I grow flowers. I grow a lot of indoor flowers. So it's always like a trade by barter. This would actually, when you see a lot of people saying things are expensive, gardeners are always in a safe situation, because we always have someone that is growing one thing or the other that we need to use. And on a daily basis, I think food is the one thing, apart from air, sunlight, oxygen, food is the one thing that we all go out to buy and cook. So with a gardener, you would have some in your garden growing. Just went into my garden and uprooted those potatoes because I planted potatoes there sometime in August. It's not even long ago. I'll tell you about the potatoes in a minute. Now, because you can always have a little space and you're growing something. So gardeners will always have something that you can come along with whatever you've grown and give to me because I grow onions and I'm not too good at growing onions. So what I do when I grow onions, I just use the green onions continuously. That's what because I like to use it to make fried rice. I just use the green on top and it serves me for a long, long time. So if I've grown just 4 onions, I can keep cutting off it for for the rest of the year. And finally, I'll just leave the onion alone. If it chooses to grow again, it comes back and it grows. But I just like to take the green part of it that I want to use straight away for my food because you can use the green onion as a part of your food. Now, the potato that I said I was going to mention, where is that potato? Okay, this potato would take 120 days to mature. This is because it's a main crop. There are three different types of potatoes that we can grow. This is a main crop. There's one that is called early and there's one that is called late. But we don't need to worry ourselves about them. What you just do is put your potato in the soil and let it grow. When you see that it is starting to flower and the leaves are trying to go away, you know when you planted it and you know when that happens, then you can identify if your crop of potato is early or late. Now, this main crop takes 128 days before I could start harvesting it. But the early one would take 60 days, between 60 and 70 days. You put it in the soil and you start harvesting it, and you find out that that's why it's called like that because it's not a main crop. It doesn't take the whole of um, 4 months for it to mature. It comes in quickly. It's something you can grow like for, oh, let's grow some emergency potato and let's grow some long-term potato. That's what I see as a difference between the two. But what happens is that they are different species. They are different varieties of potatoes. That's why they grow that way. So the most important one, oh, let me talk about this next. The most important one I want to harp on is the growing of our yam. But let me first talk about growing chives as well, because chives is also very good to grow, and we can put the soil in here. You may buy soil from the shops if you have access to it, but if not, just use the soil that you have in your backyard. Put it in the bag along with the grass. Put them all in, cover it for a few days, put in some food scraps, cover it for a few days. You will see some weeds are trying to grow and grow out of the soil. Pick them and put them back in. Because you've picked them, you've destroyed the root system, put them back in again, they will stop growing. You will now have soil that is a bit good enough for you to use for growing. You will need to add some form of manure. This could be chicken poop. When you have earthworms in your soil, they are also producing manure for you. That's one very good form of manure. So if you have your bag on the ground, the earthworms will come. That's a given. Earthworms always come looking for where you have good soil. So when you put food scraps into your bag that you want to use for your garden, the earthworms will come in. Then you can now take whatever of all these items and put it in. And then if it's the chive, you just break up the chive. I was going to grow this chive today, but I still wasn't able to. So I'm still going to grow it before the ground freezes over. Now you take this chive and you take one single one and you plant it and plant it in a straight line. I don't think this is going to have more than like one, two, three, four. This has about 9 cloves in it. So in one single line, I can plant the 9 cloves. I can use a stick. I place a stick in on the ground and plant my 9 cloves along the length of that stick. So I know that's where they are and I can identify where they are. But if you want to grow it in your bag, you know where they are already. So there's no going missing, like, oh, where did I plant this already? That's one advantage with growing in your bag. You know, I planted it in this bag. It's not a big space and I'm now looking for it. It makes it safer. You will just take that sand that you've collected, you just break up this and put them in. A lot of people would say when you're growing your chives, turn it upright, don't turn it upright. It doesn't matter. Whichever way you put it in, it will grow. In fact, I have a lot of friends who've done the experiment and they said, let's turn it upside down and put it in the soil. When they put the chives upside down, it actually takes longer for it to surface the soil because it first has to go and turn to come back outside. But there's an advantage to turning this clove upside down. The advantage is that the roots are getting more and more, and that's one very important thing in plants. If a plant has a lot of roots, that plant is going to be a successful plant. It's going to grow very well and produce a lot of food. So by the time the clove was going down and turning to come upright, it's growing a lot of roots. By the time it comes up and the shoot emerges, it will be very strong. So actually, I wouldn't say turn it upside down, but it is going to produce more roots if you actually turn it upside down. But just place it any way you like, and you have your cloves of chives. So you can say, oh, in this bag, I have planted maybe 9 chives. When they start growing up, they look just like the onion. They're just in strands, green strands like that. The green cylindrical leaves. After a while, it will start to turn yellow. I think this takes about 8 months to grow. So that's why I'm going to grow it now in November. No, this December. I'm going to grow it now in December because the harvesting of garlic is usually around July, August, when summer is very in. You're already sure that summer is in. They are flowered. They you don't want them to flower when it's time for them to start flowering, because when a plant starts to flower, it's going to be using energy. When they you see it's about to start flowering, you start to lift up your clothes and you take your harvest. So that's let's put the clothes aside. So one thing I want to actually emphasize is my love for growing things in bags, many containers that you can have. This bag here is a trolley case. Any of these bags that you have, anything that you know is a bit tough, the shopping bags that you get from supermarkets, even especially those people that do all these ashwabi, they have very tough bags that they use. Those bags are very good for growing if you grow food in them. If you have these bags as well, they are nice. There's some other ones that you go to the shops, maybe you buy rice or you buy ilubo or gari and things, and you have the bag. You can use those bags make a hole just on the side, not directly at the bottom. This is because it's resting directly on the bottom. Place the holes close to the ground and then put your plant in it. It's going to be growing beautifully for you. And you will find that you can do this in your balcony. You can do this in the narrow path near where you park your car. You can do a garden with bags in so many parts of your household that you will be surprised when you start harvesting. Because when you start harvesting food, then you see how much food you are able to produce within your living space. That's when you will be really, really happy and you will be convinced that it doesn't take a large space to produce all the food that we need. You can even do these things vertically. You can have certain spaces that are not being used that are high up there. Like somebody may have a building and it's already at what do they call it, decking stage, and then at the top there is space. Please go and put some bags and grow some things on there because all that spacing is just directly under the sun. It's very good for growing stuff. And when we grow food, we don't have to go a great distance into the forest. That may not even be safe nowadays. We can grow them right around our neighborhood. There is something that there's this guy, he's called it guerrilla gardening. You have a small portion of land, you just tell the people in the neighborhood, I want to be using this place to grow flowers. I want to be using this place to grow yam or whatever. But make sure you keep it neat. We have such little spaces around here. And I have a little portion in front of my place. The only thing that is growing there is a form of weed, it's comfrey. But everybody knows I grow the comfrey there and they leave it. When I'm ready, I pick the comfrey and put it in water. The comfrey is a type of leaf that you can use to make fertilizer for your garden. So you put these leaves in water, and after about 8 weeks, it's properly broken down. That water can be used to water your garden. We have so many other leaves that we have around us. You can put them inside water. First of all, make sure you put them in water so that all the juices are flowed into the water. This will feed the plant. There's no plant that doesn't feed another plant. If you take all the leaves that you have around when you're weeding, especially the grass, take all the grass, put those ones in the soil directly. They will break down and then maybe about a week or two later, plant in it. If you've already got your yams in there, place it on top just like mulch. Place all those grasses on top just like mulch. But you just have to keep an eye out and pick out all the, if you're seeing little things growing out, weeds, you're seeing weeds growing out, you want to keep an eye out and pick the weeds out. And this actually helps provide nutriment for your crop because the yam would be very well covered when you have all the grass clippings on top. It will be well covered, and the nitrogen that is seeping out of the leaf of the clippings will be feeding the soil. It will be very good, and you will see that your yam will grow very big. So when you're growing yam, try to find some form of way to fertilize it. You fertilize it with food scraps, with green grass, with even cardboard. Cardboard can be used to feed earthworms because earthworms just love cardboard. If you take cardboard and tear it into pieces and you put it with food scraps in a bag of soil, you will see that the earthworms in it will multiply. After that has happened, you now take this bag of soil and use it to grow your yam seedling. And you are good to go. If you don't have access to yam seedling that's being sold in shops, you can make your own. So from the yam that you're supposed to eat, that you buy, you cut it up and you can grow it after it has dried. Or you buy yam seeds. So a lot of the time we don't want to go out and buy yam seeds. You can just cut up the yam. But make sure the yam is good. It doesn't got, and if it has any bits that are not good, cut that bit away. Cut it up. 3 days later, put it in the soil and it will grow. I've done that even here in London, and the yam has been growing, and it's just a surprise that these plants can grow anywhere. It depends on if you give them the right temperature. Because I had to plant that yam inside, not outside. Because if I planted it outside and it gets cold, then it will die. So when I planted it, it was indoors and the leaves were all over the place. I planted it for the leaves. Maybe next year I will plant it to see if I will get some yam out of it. Because then I will actually um, be concentrating on, I'm trying to produce yam now. I'm not just trying to produce the leaves. Because the reason is the leaves of yam sometimes look a bit brownish and reddish, and I like that. That's the reason why I planted it. And it worked. I was happy. So yeah, I like these leaves. And after a while, it went away because the leaves can't keep growing forever. But if I was growing it for the real yam and I put it out indoors for a while, and then spring comes and I put it outside, it will have the opportunity to photosynthesize more than for the fact that I put mine indoors all the time. If I put it outside, maybe it will probably grow into a big yam. I will do that because that's what my friends have told me. I will do that against the summer of next year and report to you if you can grow your yam in London. But I know you can grow this yam here. I've grown it, I've harvested it, and you can also harvest the leaves. This is because it doesn't need to be very big before you harvest it. And when you're growing this yam, you're going to get about 4 or 5 under it. It's not going to be just one. That's the cocoa yam. It doesn't produce just one. You will have a lot underneath. So that's just one advantage of it. It's very good. It produces a lot, and you just get a lot of yam to eat. It's still not going to be as big as the puna yam that we have, but it's still something. It's a good thing for us to know that we can be right at home and start this garden using bags, cut up the yam, put something to disinfect it to make sure it doesn't go bad, and let it dry. Air dry it. Air drying. We air dry it and then we put it away for about 3 days and we plant it in a bag. You should decide whether to plant, depending on the size of the bag, whether to plant one or two, depends on how much space you have. If you plant two in it, I think it will probably not grow as big as if you only do one per bag. If you do one per bag, you have the soil, but that's what you have to consider if you're going to do one per bag. It's going to take a lot of soil. So you put one in this bag with all that soil, it will feel very happy because yams like soft, loose soil. That's why when you're planting yam on the ground, when you see farmers planting, they need to do that mound. They do that mound and put the yam in. They don't plant it right into the hard ground. And before they can harvest it next year, they have to do that again. If you're growing in bags, all you have to do is come along, shake the the stem and pull out the root and shake it together, put some waste food in it, keep feeding it. Next year, put a new yam. You don't even have to do that back-breaking work of every year. You want to hoe your farm every year. You want to till your farm every year. You want to weed. No little weeds will even be growing. I think all those people in the farm should actually be using bags to grow their yams. Because yes, it may sound somehow, but it's back-breaking work. Just tilling. You till that place last year to put the yam in, and you till it again this year again. I think we should be growing it in bags, please. There's less work and more rest for us to be able to do some other things. Just have it so that the soil is loose and we can grow more food. Because that's the main focus of what I'm always thinking. How are we going to be able to produce more food for ourselves? And with the little space that we have, and that is the use of bags. It has come in and it's taking over everywhere. See many people using bags for growing food, using bags for growing yam, using bags for growing salads, using bags for growing even cassava. Yeah, the cassava will look like a very small tree. You can grow it in a bag. Just put one in each bag, support it against something, and let it go on. The only difficulty that we may have in the case of the cassava is that the branch stretches. So you can't place two bags together. Put cassava in it, they will be stretching onto each other. It may not be too convenient. So I've not seen anyone growing cassava in bags. But if you want to grow just a few cassava, you can put each one and space it. So the bags will just be resting on their own and you have your cassava properly spaced out and it carries on growing. In the case of the yam, it doesn't need that amount of spacing. It grows on a vine. You just trellis it against a wood or any pole. It grows up, grows right round and round and round, and it's giving you the yam that you're going to harvest at the end of the day. So please consider getting some bags, old bags, look in the house, bags that you are not even thinking of using, and then get soil. You can get soil from the shops or you can get soil from your backyard. There is nothing wrong with the soil in the backyard. The soil in the backyard, you just dig it, put it in the bag. Put some food scraps, put some chicken poops. The soil will already have some earthworms. By the time you come back in a week's time, while you're preparing your yam indoors, that soil will be looking different. Any little weeds that you see that are growing out, pick them off and grow your yam in it. In 6 months' time, you will be eating big yam. You've seen that video. You will be eating big yams, even bigger than that. And that is what we all need. We all need a source of producing food without breaking our backs. Thank you very much. I appreciate you and I hope you have gained from this live video, and you will please share this video so that everybody can try to produce food. Even if you have the smallest space, just at the side, by the corner, at the back, in front, you can put some soil in the bag. And if you don't have where you're going to get soil, you can dig some soil from your backyard, dig some soil from your front yard, and put food waste scraps. You don't want me to show you my food waste scraps here. It's not a big issue. In fact, it's better for you to have food waste scraps. Nobody is going to be complaining that you have it. You have your food waste scraps in your bin. have my food waste scraps in here. I love it because it's a very good, well sealed container. I put my food waste in it and lid it and keep it. I come back again, put the food waste in it and lid it, and it's all right. When I want to use it at the end of the week, it's full. I just go out and mix it with the soil, and the earthworms are happy. That's the best way to feed our soil and to feed our plants, because your plants eat the same things you eat, and you don't want to go to the market to go and be buying food for them. Now, rather than going to the market to buy food for them, give them some of the waste ones that you don't want anymore. You may buy fertilizers, that's food fertilizers. You can see them in the shops. You see which fertilizers. You can buy some, but don't let that be the only food you're giving your plants. Give them all these waste scraps. Give them cardboard. Give them leaves. Give them grass. That's what plants want to eat, because that's what the microbes in the soil want to feed on, and then the earthworms will feed on what the microbes have produced, and the earthworms will produce worm poop. That's what makes the soil very fertile. If you see your soil and it has earthworms in it, that soil is very fertile. Because if soil doesn't have earthworms, then the fertility will be getting depleted and it's not being replenished. If it has earthworms, you know that it's continuously being replenished, and you're continuously putting them some fertilizers in form of leaves, grass, and everything, and it all goes on to feed your crop. Now, one thing that I must mention is that these things are heavy feeders. Potatoes, yams, they are heavy feeders. So if you grow for 1 year, because I've seen some people say, oh, we grew first year, it was nice. When we grew second, I'm like, did you replenish the soil? They are such heavy feeders that if you grow 1 year, you need to replenish that soil. You need to put in a lot of compost, a lot of food waste, tear some cardboard, some newspapers, just cover it and let the soil get replenished again. Then if you see some fertilizers, you can buy it and put it. So that when you come to grow, that soil has regained its normality again. It's become fertile soil again. Because you've grown big, big yams in it, you've grown big, big potatoes in it, you take it and go. And then you don't replenish the soil. The following year, you want to come back and plant. What's going to be there? The soil needs to be replenished. You replenish the soil with all those things that I've just mentioned, the food waste, the green grass clippings that you have, and leaves, leaf fall all over your garden or even your neighborhood. You collect the leaves in my own neighborhood. A lot of people in my neighborhood are gardeners. We actually we share the leaves. So I collect the leaves and you put it in. Now, one thing is you may have a shrub that, oh, this ivy. When you cut down ivy, just dip it in a large container of water and let it be there for 6 weeks. You can use that as fertilizer as well. All these things need to return to the soil. That's just it. To be used for growing our plants. That's the best way for any system of gardening to work around itself. It's a great thing to be able to talk about this evening, and I hope you all learned and gained from being here. Thank you very much. I appreciate your coming. Please find your bags, find your yam, and I'll be looking forward to the pictures of what you have planted when the time comes. Welcome and see you. Thank you very much. Welcome. If you have joined and it's almost over, because I don't want this to be very long, so that some other people that want to watch it will not say, oh, 1 hour, 1 hour. I want it to be short so that people can say, I want to watch this. So please, you can just try to watch from the beginning. You watch the first half. If you're interested, then you come back and watch the second half when you have more time again. But please take away what I'm trying to say is get your bags and get your soil. And if you don't have soil to buying, access to buying soil quickly, then use the soil in the backyard. It's safe to use the soil in the backyard. Thank you very much. And I appreciate you being here, Yalaje. I really, really appreciate you. Gardening Raja, thank you. Thank you so much. To Vico Charles, thanks a million. Potted Gardening, I appreciate you. Sibin Nakumoyewa, thank you. And Joy, thank you so, so much, everybody. And for those of you that I cannot see your names, I thank you all. And thanks to those of you watching this later. You're also appreciated because you may not have time to watch it right now, but you're watching it now. Thank you very much. And I would like to end this live stream here and see you again on Monday. Bye.